So these rights are already there. So in the case of the leadership, when you go and say that the president of a country has signed a document to attack the opposition or to destroy opposition, it's a very grievous, accusation. It's not something to be taken lightly. It means that the whole country is under threat, just like Watergate. So when they were invited, I was expecting that we will analyze the issues. But what you hear is like, if we are immune to arrest. We are not immune to arrest as journalists. The reality of the fact is that the police also cannot, even when we are under arrest, cannot disrespect our rights because those rights are constitutional. They can be sued. The security agents will be sued. If they keep me in detention beyond 48 hours, I can go to court to claim damages. So I think we should allow the Constitution to work in relation to how we do our work. And you'll be sure that this freedom is not granted by anybody, it's constitutional, and nobody can take it away.
Well, two things came up in that arrest, and I'm not sure they were making all of those notices because they were merely invited. They actually did say in their own account, and it was also published out there, that one, they were held beyond 24 hours, which is the stipulated time by law, and that they were also trying to be compelled to disclose their source. And that's why they felt, no, that wasn't right on their part.
No. You cannot be compelled. First of all, the Constitution says that you can be detained for 48 hours, not 24 hours. You can be investigated for up to 48 hours. But the reality of what I'm saying is, did they say they were tortured? Because under dictatorship, you will be tortured. You cannot be compelled. Sometimes there could be vigorous questioning. But that does not mean that anybody is torturing you or in many of the dictatorial countries, you are held in chains or maybe you are tortured or you are drugged, that kind of thing to force statements from you. If the security agencies in Nigeria embark on this path, you will know that freedom is under assault and a number of us will attack it. It's not just those doing journalism. But the reality of the fact is that if you are invited and you are questioned, you are not obliged to answer those questions. The law says you can refuse to answer. You can also ask your lawyers, to follow up on those. And I'm not sure that any of those rights were violated. If they were, they have the leverage under the law to pursue restitution.
Now, still on the issue of ownership, which we still would want to stay on, how well has the country been able to manage all of that if you say, well, some of the owners influence what comes out of their media?
Well, it is difficult to say whether those owners dictate to journalists on a daily basis. But the problem of ownership and media control is that sometimes as a reporter you think you have an obligation to your benefactor, not to write or do anything that will offend his interest, or sometimes also to write something that will make him happy that you are dealing with his opponents or his enemies. Sometimes it comes from our own sense of gratitude for our employment, but some other times it comes from subtle control of honors, and this is honors across board. So, and that is why we think that the problem of the Nigerian media today is the absence of a professional ombudsman or a professional ethic organization that can indeed discipline without government involved or anybody. But without that, you find that over time it will erode our professional capacity to be respected, to be believed. Because a story in a newspaper is supposed to be factual, it's supposed to be true, it's supposed to be balanced. And I'll give you an example. One day I was in Delta State doing my National Good Governance tour, which we are doing across the country. And I was listening to the radio and I was being accused of that I wrote to a state government to give me 150 million naira to run the Good Governance tour in his state. And they ran the story on radio. The governor that allegedly accused me was never asked. So after the program, then they remember that something grievous had taken place, and they asked me, they want me to appear on the program that had been accused. I asked them, have you been able to find out from the person who allegedly accused me if he really says so? Then they discovered that there was nothing like, first of all, nobody accused me. There was never any accusation that I wanted or I wrote or asked anybody to give me money. But I have already been blackmailed. The person who allegedly accused me had already been slandered on a live program. Now, where in the world will you see that? Where in the world will you see that? So you see, a lot of problems exist in our media. And I think it's important that we as professionals, look into them. If we don't, we are going to get this. It's one thing to be free, it's another to be truthful, it's another to be balanced, it's another to be objective. And I think it is this element that will make the freedom that we have to be useful to the country and to compare us internationally.
You talked about, regulating control or looking at that particular problem by getting an unbiased ombudsman. Do you also think about examples? Someone would say that you are the helm of affairs of possibly the biggest media organization in the country. Do you think that one of the ways you could tackle that particular problem is to do it by example?
Well, I can tell you that across board, there is no, since I've been here, I cannot say that the media organs under government, that the federal government have been perfect. But I would like you to compare us to media organs run by state governments, even in opposition states. Find out whether anybody goes to those radio stations or television stations to accuse people at that level, and they will still be in their job the following day. That here, on both FRCN and NTA, we have tried to open them up so that if you looked at all the elections in 2011, there is no political party that didn't run their programs in those stations. And I've tried my best. I've never really gone out to give instructions to anybody. But the reality of the fact is that, yes, both those in government and those in private, particularly private newspapers and radio stations and television stations, all of us therefore need the professional ombudsman, which will now be able to assess whether the programs run on channels, on AIT, on NTA, or in pages of newspapers are professional or not. That will then give the media people liberty. That's what we're asking for. And it's important for both those working in public media organizations and private organizations. We need a professional regulator that will be able to hold us to account and therefore give us respect and liberty from both owners, politicians, members of the public. It's important to do that for the growth of the media.
How are we able to separate true criticism, against some of government policies? For instance, now, we've seen the NCAA has just released new guidelines for private jet owners. It's a new 2013 aviation policy, but it would seem that the thrust of this one is private jet owners, and we can see the controversy already brewing before now. How do we begin to separate true criticism of, policies like that from, say, government things without making the media look like they're actually in opposition?
All over the world, policies.
Please go on.
Let me tell you that all over the world, policies come through different facets. Sometimes an incident leads to a new policy. Sometimes it comes from private individuals. Sometimes it comes through parliament. The truth of the matter is, because of the incident involving the aircraft of the Rivers State government, there's been a lot of write-ups, a lot of public discussion, which is healthy for the aviation industry. I absolutely don't see those who disagree with government as enemies. That has always been my standpoint. If you disagree with government, you are not an enemy. Of course, there are those who go the extra mile beyond disagreement, to pull down. That is a different matter altogether. And in the case of the aviation industry, I think what we need is to look at those policies and see whether they are healthy for the aviation industry or not. And it's a public policy for discussion. So the discussion will go on, but what is best for Nigeria will be enforced. I believe that is the spirit of democracy.
All right, then speak to us about this, if you will. Is it true that the federal government of Nigeria paid $40 million to an Israeli company to monitor, for internet surveillance, to monitor private citizens, especially journalists?
I am not fully familiar. I don't have all the facts on the table before me. But let me say that most countries of the world, whether it's America, whether it is Britain, whether it is China, or whichever country, of course they monitor internet. There is no country in the world where communications are not monitored. None. Go to US, go to Canada, go to Britain. They monitor. There is no country that does not monitor, because there are sometimes issues of security involved, particularly in a country like Nigeria, where we are having challenges of terror. For example, where terror uses technology to destroy lives. So in many countries it is done. Maybe they don't talk about it. But our democracy is new. But I do know that there is no major